Malam Yusuf sat in his compound, blood dripping from his ears, while something invisible tore through his home, shattering every mirror, every window, every reflection. His neighbors cowered outside, reciting Ayat al-Kursi in trembling voices, but whatever was inside that house was beyond their understanding of protection. "You promised!" a voice roared, not from any human throat, but from the air itself, from the walls, from the very earth beneath their feet. "You promised me, father." But here's what made everyone's blood run cold. Malam Yusuf had no biological children. He had never married. He had lived alone for 47 years in that compound at the edge of Kano. So who or what was calling him father? Why would a devout Muslim elder, a man who had memorized the entire Quran by age 12, who had led Friday prayers for decades, make a pact with a jinn? And why, after 23 years of apparent peace, did that jinn return demanding what he claimed was his birthright? What happened in that house over the next 7 days would force an entire community to confront a question most Muslims avoid. Can love exist between human and jinn? And if it can, what happens when that love demands a price no father should ever have to pay? This story will shake everything you think you know about faith, family, and the unseen world. I'm begging you, listen until the very end, because the lesson Malam Yusuf learned came at a cost that still haunts everyone who witnessed it. But before we continue, please check if you're subscribed to this channel. And leave a comment telling me which country you're watching from. Your engagement helps us share these important stories about faith and the unseen world with more people. Now, let me take you back to where this impossible story truly began. 23 years before that terrible night, Malam Yusuf was a different man, though no less lonely. He was 54 years old, a Quran teacher at the central mosque, respected by everyone, close to no one. His compound, inherited from his father, sat at the northeastern edge of Kano, where the city's noise faded into the whisper of acacia trees and red dust roads. People whispered about why he never married. Some said he was too devoted to Allah to concern himself with worldly matters. Others claimed he had loved a woman once, a Christian girl who refused to convert, and the heartbreak had sealed his heart forever. The cruelest rumors suggested he was cursed, that no woman could bear to stay near him because something dark lived in his bloodline. All of them were wrong. The truth was simpler and sadder. Malam Yusuf was terrified of failing someone he loved. His own father had been a harsh man, quick with the rod, slow with affection. His mother had died when he was 7, leaving him to navigate childhood alone with a man who saw emotion as weakness. "Love makes you vulnerable," his father had told him the day they buried his mother, "and vulnerability destroys men." So Yusuf had built walls. He taught the Quran with patience and wisdom, but kept every student at arm's length. He attended community gatherings, but left before the conversations turned personal. He prayed 5 times daily at the mosque, but never lingered for the brotherhood that followed. His compound reflected his isolation. 3 rooms arranged around a small courtyard with a mango tree at its center, a tree his mother had planted. The rooms were immaculate but cold, no photographs on the walls, no decorations, just books, hundreds of Islamic texts, tafsirs, hadith collections, volumes in Arabic, English, and Hausa. At night, he would sit under the mango tree and read until his eyes burned, because silence, he had discovered, was louder than any noise when you were alone. It was under that tree, on a night when loneliness felt like it might crack his chest open, that Yusuf made the mistake that would change everything. He prayed a dua he should never have uttered. "Ya Allah," he whispered, tears streaming down his weathered face, "if you will not grant me a family in the halal way, then send me companionship in whatever form you see fit. I don't care if it's human or jinn, alive or spirit. I just cannot bear this emptiness anymore." The words left his mouth before wisdom could stop them, and in the unseen world something heard. 3 nights later, Yusuf woke to the sound of crying. Not the wailing of an infant, but something stranger, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through his compound like wind through a cave. He sat up in bed, heart hammering, and reached for his tasbih. The crying stopped. Silence pressed against his ears, thick and expectant. Yusuf recited Ayat al-Kursi under his breath and rose from bed, wrapping his prayer shawl around his shoulders despite the humid night. The courtyard was empty. The mango tree stood motionless. Not even its leaves stirred. But there, at the base of the tree where his mother had planted it 47 years ago, something glowed with a faint amber light. Yusuf approached slowly, his recitation of Ayat al-Kursi growing louder. It was a bundle, wrapped in cloth that seemed woven from moonlight and shadow, moving slightly as if something inside struggled against confinement. "Astaghfirullah," Yusuf breathed. "What is this?" He should have turned away, should have sought the Imam's guidance, should have recited every protective surah he knew and buried the thing without looking. Instead, loneliness made him foolish. He knelt and unwrapped the cloth. What lay inside was neither fully human nor purely Djinn. It was something caught between worlds. An infant, or the approximation of one, with skin that flickered between solid flesh and wisps of smoke. Its eyes were too old, too knowing, but when it looked at Yusuf, those ancient eyes filled with the purest, most desperate need he had ever witnessed. The creature opened its mouth and spoke, not in baby sounds, but in clear, plaintive words. "Abba, Father." Yusuf's hands trembled. Every instinct screamed danger. Every lesson of his faith warned against this moment. But that word, Abba, unlocked something in his heart that 47 years of loneliness had sealed shut. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I am Zainab," the creature said in a voice like wind through reeds. "I am the answer to your prayer. You asked Allah for companionship in whatever form He saw fit. I am that form, born of smokeless fire but bound by your dua. You called, and I came. You are my father now, whether you accept it or not." "But Djinn cannot be family to humans," Yusuf protested, even as his arms instinctively cradled the strange child. The Quran says many things about Djinn," Zainab interrupted, her infant form already beginning to shift, growing slightly as if years were compressing into moments. "But does it say we cannot love? Does it say a prayer uttered in desperation cannot bind worlds together? You invited me, Malam Yusuf, and now you must decide. Will you honor what you asked for? Or will you abandon me as your father abandoned you emotionally?" The accusation struck like a physical blow. How did this creature know about his father? "I know everything about you," Zainab said, her form now that of a small child, perhaps 5 years old, sitting cross-legged in the dirt. "I know your mother's name was Hawa. I know you memorized Surah al-Baqarah to please a father who never smiled. I know you're lonely enough to die from it. That's why I could come. That's why your prayer reached me across the veil between worlds." Yusuf's mind reeled. This violated everything he understood about faith, about boundaries between seen and unseen. Yet something in him recognized a truth he couldn't deny. He had prayed for this. He had opened the door. "What do you want from me?" he finally asked. "What every child wants," Zainab said simply. "To be raised, to be loved, to be taught and protected and given a place in this world. I may be Djinn, but I am young in spirit. I need a father, and you need a child. Allah has arranged this. Whether through mercy or test, I do not know, but here we are." Yusuf looked at the creature who called herself Zainab and saw his own loneliness reflected back at him. In that moment, wisdom warred with need, and need won. "If I do this," he said slowly, "there must be rules. You will learn Islam. You will pray. You will respect this household and never harm any human, and you will never reveal your true nature to anyone. Can you accept this?" Zainab's smile was radiant and terrible. "I accept, Abba. I will be the daughter you never had, and you will be the father I chose." That's how Malam Yusuf became father to a Djinn, with a prayer uttered in desperation and a choice made in loneliness that would reshape both their existences. The first days were chaos. Zainab could take any form she wished: child, teenager, elder, animal, smoke, shifting between them with unsettling ease. She had no concept of privacy, materializing in Yusuf's room at odd hours to ask questions about human existence with the intensity of someone trying to memorize a foreign language. "Why do humans sleep?" she asked at 3 a.m., her form that of a 10-year-old girl sitting cross-legged at the foot of his bed, eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "Zainab, please," Yusuf groaned, pulling his blanket over his head. "We've discussed this. Humans need rest. Our bodies aren't made of smokeless fire. But it seems inefficient. You waste a third of your life unconscious." "It's not waste. It's necessity. And we dream during sleep. That's when our souls travel to the barzakh, the realm between worlds." Her eyes widened with genuine curiosity. "You can do that? Travel to the in-between? I thought only we could." "Every night, when we sleep, our souls leave our bodies and return before we wake. That's why we say Alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah who gave us life after death, and unto Him is the resurrection when we wake." Zainab was quiet for a long moment. her form flickering slightly. A sign Yusuf was learning meant she was processing something profound. "So humans are more like us than I thought," she finally said. "Your souls leave your bodies too. You're just more fragile about it. Yes. Now, please, let me sleep. We'll continue this discussion after Fajr." But sleep became difficult with a Djinn in the house. Zainab had no concept of day and night cycles, no understanding of human routines. She would rearrange furniture while he slept, practice taking different forms in the courtyard, and once, terrifyingly, he woke to find her perched in the mango tree in the form of a massive bird with human eyes, watching him. "Zainab, you cannot do that," he shouted, his heart racing. "Why not? I'm your daughter. Don't fathers watch over their children while they sleep? Not like that, not as a predatory bird with glowing eyes." She shifted back to the form of a young girl and climbed down from the tree, looking genuinely confused. "I don't understand human comfort. To me, all forms are equal, but I'll try to learn." And learn she did. Over the weeks, Zainab began to stabilize into a consistent form, that of a girl around 12 years old, with dark eyes and darker hair, dressed modestly as Yusuf insisted. She stopped shifting unnecessarily. She learned to knock before entering rooms. She began to understand that humans needed physical space and emotional boundaries, but teaching her Islam proved more challenging. "Read this," Yusuf would say, handing her a Quran. "I already know it," she'd reply. "We Jinn were here when it was revealed. Some of my kind listened to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and accepted Islam. I know every surah, every ayat, every tajweed rule." Knowing and understanding are different things. Read it again, but this time, think about what it means for you. You're living with a human now. You need to understand our perspective. So Zainab would read, her ancient eyes scanning words she'd heard centuries ago, but seeing them anew through the lens of this strange experiment in cross-species family. One evening, she looked up from Surah Ar-Rahman with tears streaming down her face, the first time Yusuf had seen her cry. "Abba, this surah keeps asking, which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? But I've denied so many favors. I lived for 300 years taking what I wanted, appearing to humans for my own amusement, treating your kind like we were superior. But you're teaching me I was wrong. You're showing me that family isn't about power. It's about sacrifice and patience and love. How do I repay Allah for sending me to you?" Yusuf felt his own eyes sting. "By being the best daughter you can be, by learning what it means to be connected to someone beyond yourself, by growing, even though you're ancient." "Am I your daughter then?" Zainab asked softly. "Truly." Yusuf hesitated. The question carried weight beyond words. To claim her as daughter was to bind himself irrevocably to a being not of his kind, to take responsibility for a soul made of fire while his was clothed in clay. But looking at her earnest face, at the vulnerability she showed despite her power, he couldn't deny the truth forming in his heart. "Yes," he said quietly, "you are my daughter. In every way that matters, you are mine, and I am yours." Zainab's smile could have lit the entire compound. She threw her arms around him, her form solid and warm and absolutely real, and for the first time in 47 years, Malam Yusuf knew what it felt like to be needed by someone who loved him. That night, the loneliness that had defined his existence finally began to ease. For 3 years, Yusuf and Zainab lived in careful harmony. To the outside world, she was simply his adopted daughter, an orphan from a distant village he'd taken in out of charity. The story was plausible enough that most neighbors accepted it without question, but some noticed things that didn't quite add up. Malam Ibrahim, the elderly imam who had known Yusuf for decades, was the first to voice concern. He appeared at the compound one afternoon during Asr prayer time, his weathered face creased with worry. "Brother Yusuf," he began carefully, settling onto the mat in the courtyard, "forgive my intrusion, but I must speak with you about the girl." Yusuf's heart seized, but he kept his expression neutral. "Zainab? What about her?" "She's remarkable. The way she recites Quran. It's perfect, brother. Too perfect. I've been teaching for 50 years, and I've never heard anyone, not even the most gifted Hafiz, recite with such precision. It's as if she learned from the angel Jibril himself." "She's very dedicated," Yusuf said carefully. "And the way she moves," Ibrahim continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Sometimes, when she thinks no one is watching, she seems to glide rather than walk. And her eyes, Yusuf, they're too old, too knowing. What child looks at you as if they can see through to your soul?" Yusuf's mouth went dry. She's been through much hardship. It aged her in ways we cannot see. Ibrahim leaned closer, his voice urgent. Brother, I know the signs. My grandmother was a healer. She taught me to recognize when the unseen world intersects with ours. That girl is not entirely human, is she? The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Yusuf could deny it, could maintain the lie, but Ibrahim's eyes held no judgment, only concern and a strange sort of understanding. What would you say? Yusuf asked slowly. If I told you she was Djinn? Ibrahim didn't flinch. I would say you're playing with fire, literally. And I would ask, why? So Yusuf told him everything, the prayer uttered in desperation, Zainab's arrival, the 3 years of learning to be family across the barrier of species. And as he spoke, he watched Ibrahim's expression shift from concern to something approaching awe. You realize what you've done, Ibrahim said when Yusuf finished. You've bound a Djinn to you not through magic or coercion, but through love, through the legitimate relationship of father and daughter. This is, I don't know if it's blessed or dangerous, but it's unprecedented. She's changed me, Yusuf admitted. Teaching her has taught me. Loving her has healed wounds I didn't know I carried. But have you considered what she might want from you eventually? Djinn live for centuries. She may appear as a child now, but her mind is ancient. What happens when she grows, not in body, but in ambition? What will she demand of you then? The question planted a seed of unease Yusuf couldn't shake. That night, he found Zainab in the courtyard, staring up at the stars in her usual form. The 12-year-old girl he'd come to think of as truly his daughter. Zainab, he said softly, sitting beside her. What do you want from this life we're building? She turned to him, those ancient eyes glinting in the moonlight. What do you mean? What's your purpose here, your goal? You're Djinn. You could be anywhere, doing anything. Why stay with an old Quran teacher in a dusty compound? For a long moment she was silent. Then she spoke, her voice carrying centuries of loneliness. Because, Abba, I was invisible. For 300 years I existed, but I didn't matter. I could make humans see me, fear me, even worship me. But no one ever loved me. No one ever asked what I wanted or taught me gently or corrected me with patience. You gave me something I never had, purpose through belonging. But one day I'll die, Yusuf said gently. Humans are temporary. What will you do when I'm gone? Zainab's expression hardened in a way that sent ice through Yusuf's veins. Then I'll have had a father for however long Allah grants us. That's more than most Djinn ever experience. And when you die, Abba, I'll make sure everyone knows what you were to me. I'll make sure your legacy lives forever. Zainab, that's not... Do you regret it? She interrupted, her voice sharp. Do you regret calling me? Regret making me your daughter? No, Yusuf said immediately, and meant it. Never. You've given me more joy than I thought possible. Then don't speak of endings. We have now. That's enough. But as Yusuf lay in bed that night, Ibrahim's warning echoed in his mind. What will she demand of you then? The answer came on Zainab's 7th year in the household. Though in Djinn terms, she had merely chosen to mark time in a human way to honor Yusuf. She began asking questions that made him uncomfortable. Abba, in Islam, children inherit from their parents, correct? They were sitting in the courtyard after Maghrib prayer, the evening air thick with the smell of suya from a nearby vendor. Yes, Yusuf answered carefully. According to Quranic law, children receive their prescribed shares. And adopted children? What do they receive? They can receive up to 1/3 through bequest, but they're not automatic heirs like biological children. Zainab nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. But I'm not adopted in the human sense, am I? You didn't choose me from an orphanage. I came because of your prayer. I'm bound to you through something deeper than human law. Where is this going, Zainab? I want to understand my place, Abba. Am I your daughter in name only? Or am I your daughter in truth? Because if I'm your daughter in truth, then I have rights, responsibilities, obligations. Yusuf felt the first stirrings of the unease Ibrahim had warned him about. You are my daughter in every way that matters to me. But you're also Djinn. The laws that govern human families may not apply. Then what does apply? Zainab's voice rose, not in anger but in desperate confusion. What am I, Abba? What are we? You saved me from meaningless existence. You gave me purpose, identity, family. But now I'm caught between worlds. Too human to live freely as Djinn, too Djinn to be fully human. I need to know. What do I owe you? What do you owe me? The question hung in the air like smoke. You owe me nothing, Yusuf said firmly. I gave freely. Love doesn't create debt, but in my world, it does. Zainab whispered. Among Djinn, everything is transaction. Even family, especially family. You gave me 7 years of fatherhood. That creates obligation. I must repay it. I don't want repayment. I want— What do you want, Abba? Zainab interrupted, her form flickering for the first time in months, a sign of emotional distress. Because I need to give you something. Something that proves I'm worthy of being called your daughter. Let me serve you. Let me protect you. Let me show the world what you are to me. The world doesn't need to know. I need them to know, Zainab's voice cracked. When you die, Abba, and you will die because humans always do, I need them to know you weren't just another lonely old man. I need them to know you were a father. My father. The father who saw past fear and took in a creature of fire. Let me honor you while you still live. Yusuf saw tears streaming down her face. Real tears, not smoke or illusion, but genuine emotion from a being who shouldn't cry at all. How? He asked quietly. How would you honor me? Let me be seen, Zainab said. Not as human, but as I truly am. Let me stand beside you at the mosque. Let me tell your community what you did, that you had the courage to love beyond boundaries. Let me make you famous for your compassion. Zainab, no, that would make you proud, she finished, her eyes blazing. Show everyone that Malam Yusuf is more than a teacher. He's a healer of worlds. It would make me a heretic, Yusuf said gently. It would destroy my reputation, possibly get me killed. People fear what they don't understand. If they knew what you are, they'd call me a magician, a kafir, someone who consorts with devils. But I'm not a devil. I'm your daughter. I know that. But they won't. Zainab stood abruptly, her form shimmering with barely controlled emotion. Then what am I supposed to do with this gratitude? This debt? This love that has nowhere to go? Yusuf rose and took her hands. They felt warm, solid, real. You love me by being here, by learning, by growing. That's enough, Zainab. That's always been enough. But even as he said it, he saw something shift in her eyes, a determination that frightened him. No, Abba, she said softly. It's not enough. Not for me. You gave me everything. I need to give you something in return, even if you don't want it, even if it destroys me to do it. She pulled away and walked toward the house, her form flickering between girl and smoke and something else, something Yusuf couldn't quite identify. That night, he heard her voice through the walls, speaking in the Djinn tongue, harsh syllables that made his teeth ache. She was calling to others of her kind, and for the first time since Zainab had entered his life, Malam Yusuf was afraid. 3 nights later, Yusuf woke to find his compound surrounded, not by humans, but by beings of smokeless fire, dozens of them materializing in forms that ranged from hauntingly beautiful to terrifyingly alien. They stood in a circle around his courtyard, their presence making the air crackle with energy that raised the hair on his arms. Zainab stood at the center, her form now fully mature, no longer the 12-year-old child, but a woman of ethereal beauty and terrible power. She had shed the human guise completely. Abba, she said, her voice resonating with harmonics that hurt his ears. Come, there are those who must meet you. Yusuf emerged from his room, clutching his Quran, reciting Ayat al-Kursi under his breath. The Djinn parted to let him pass, their eyes, dozens of them, following his movement. An elder Djinn, his form like living flame contained in the shape of a man, stepped forward. So this is the human who dared bind one of us through love rather than magic. He didn't bind me, Zainab said sharply. I chose him. He called, and I answered. Nevertheless, the elder continued, you have created an anomaly, Malam Yusuf. In 3,000 years of interaction between our kinds, never has a Djinn claimed a human as family through mutual consent. This breaks no law, for there is no law governing it, but it creates precedent, and precedent must be acknowledged. I don't understand, Yusuf managed, his voice steady despite his terror. What do you want from me? We want nothing, another Djinn spoke, a female with eyes like molten gold. But your daughter has called this council. She wishes to declare you her father before all Djinn kind, to make it binding not just in human understanding, but in ours, to elevate you from teacher to honored elder of 2 worlds. I never asked for— I know, Zainab interrupted, moving to stand beside him. But I'm asking now, Abba, let me do this, let me make you legend. Zainab, please, Yusuf whispered urgently. This is too much. I'm just a Quran teacher. I don't want to be legend. I just wanted to not be lonely. And I was nothing before you, Zainab said fiercely. You made me something. Let me return the favor. The elder Djinn raised his hand. The choice is yours, human. Accept what your daughter offers. and you will be bound to Djinn kind as family. Respected, protected, but also obligated. Refuse, and things remain as they are, but the debt she feels will remain unpaid. Choose wisely. Yusuf looked at Zainab, truly looked at her. Behind the power and the ethereal beauty, he still saw the confused creature who had appeared at the base of his mother's tree 7 years ago. He saw the child who had learned to pray, to laugh, to be vulnerable. "What obligations?" he asked carefully. "When you die," the elder explained, "your burial rites will include both human and Djinn customs. Your grave will be tended by beings of fire as well as clay. Your name will be remembered in our world as well as yours, and when judgment comes, Zainab will testify on your behalf, not as servant but as daughter. Her word carries weight in realms you cannot imagine. And the cost? You must accept that you're no longer entirely human in the eyes of the unseen world. You've crossed a boundary. There's no going back." Yusuf was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Zainab. "Is this truly what you need?" "Yes, Abba. I need the world, both worlds, to know you're mine and I'm yours. I need it to be official, real, permanent. Then I accept," Yusuf said simply. "For you, I accept." The courtyard erupted in a sound like wind through canyons, the Djinn's way of expressing approval. Light flared from dozens of forms, and Yusuf felt something settle over him like a mantle, not quite physical, but absolutely real. Zainab threw her arms around him, weeping openly now. "Thank you, Abba. Thank you." But as the Djinn dispersed back into smoke and shadow, the elder remained. He fixed Yusuf with an unreadable expression. "You've made history tonight, teacher. But know this. Bonds between worlds are not easily maintained. Your daughter loves you now, but Djinn are not human. Their emotions burn hotter, change faster. One day she may ask something of you that you cannot give. Pray you have the strength to refuse her, or the wisdom to accept the consequences." Then he too was gone, leaving Yusuf and Zainab alone in the courtyard. "What have we done?" Yusuf whispered. "We've become permanent," Zainab answered, her form finally settling back into the familiar 12-year-old. "You're my father forever now, Abba. Nothing can change that. Not death, not time, not even Allah's judgment, because you chose this knowing what I was. That's love that transcends worlds." Yusuf should have felt joy. Instead, he felt the first tendrils of a fear he couldn't name. For 13 years after the ceremony, life continued in a fragile peace. Yusuf aged as humans do. His beard grew completely white, his steps slower, his hands shakier when he held the Quran. He was now 77 years old, still teaching at the mosque, but no longer leading prayers. His body was failing in the gentle, inevitable way of mortal flesh. Zainab remained unchanged. She still appeared as the 12-year-old girl, still recited Quran with impossible perfection, still sat with him under the mango tree each evening. But Yusuf noticed subtle shifts, a restlessness in her eyes, a tension in how she held herself, as if she were waiting for something. The test came on a Thursday evening after Isha prayer. Yusuf had just returned from the mosque, exhausted from the short walk that had once been effortless. He settled onto his mat in the courtyard, breathing heavily, pain radiating through his chest. Zainab materialized beside him, her expression tight with concern. "Abba, you're getting worse." "It's the nature of being human," Yusuf said with a weak smile. "We deteriorate. It's how Allah designed us. But it doesn't have to be this way." Something in her tone made Yusuf's blood run cold. "What do you mean?" Zainab knelt before him, taking his weathered hands in hers. "Abba, you're dying. The doctors said your heart is failing. You have maybe 6 months, maybe less, but I can stop it. Zainab, listen to me." Her voice cracked with desperation. "I'm Djinn. I exist in ways you don't understand. I can extend your life, not forever, but decades more. I can heal your heart, strengthen your bones, give you the vitality you had at 50. You could have 20 more years, 30 even." Yusuf gently pulled his hands away. "That's not how it works, daughter. Allah has written my time. I cannot." "Allah also gave you a Djinn daughter with the power to help you." Zainab's form flickered, her control slipping. "Why would he allow us to bond if not for this? Why give you someone who could save you if he didn't intend for you to be saved?" "Because this life is temporary, Zainab. For humans, it's supposed to be. Our souls are meant to return to Allah. You cannot interfere with Qadr, with divine decree." "But you prayed for me," Zainab shouted, tears streaming down her face. "You asked Allah for companionship in whatever form he saw fit. I am that form, and I'm telling you, I can keep you here longer. I can give us more time. Please, Abba, please let me save you. Yusuf saw the agony in her ancient eyes and understood. She had known this moment would come. For 20 years, she had been preparing for it, dreading it. The debt she felt, the obligation she carried, this was how she wanted to repay it, by refusing death itself. I cannot accept, Yusuf said gently. To extend my life through jinn magic would be to reject Allah's wisdom. It would be like saying I know better than He does when my soul should return. So you'd rather leave me? Zainab's voice broke. After everything? After teaching me to love, to hope, to believe in family, you'd just abandon me. I'm not abandoning you. I'm completing my journey, as all humans must. Then what was the point? Zainab stood abruptly, her form shifting wildly between child and woman and smoke. What was the point of any of this if you're just going to die and leave me alone again? You said I was your daughter. You made me believe family was forever. Family is forever, Yusuf said, struggling to his feet despite the pain. But not in this realm. We'll see each other again, Zainab. In the Akhirah, the hereafter. If Allah wills it, we'll— I'm Djinn! Zainab screamed, and the force of her voice shattered every window in the compound. I don't die like you do. I don't have the same afterlife. When you go to your judgment, I'll still be here alone for centuries more. You talk about forever, but you're condemning me to eternal loneliness the moment your heart stops. The truth of her words hit Yusuf like a physical blow. He had never considered it, the fundamental difference in their existences. He had treated her as daughter without thinking about what that meant across the vast gulf of their different destinies. Then what do you want from me? He whispered. Zainab's form stabilized into something Yusuf had never seen. Her true form, neither child nor woman, but pure essence. She appeared as living flame in the shape of grief itself. I want you to let me bind you, she said quietly, her voice now layered with harmonics that suggested multiple jinn speaking as one. Not to extend your life, but to ensure our connection transcends death. Let me mark your soul so that when you die I can find you in the barzakh, the realm between worlds. Let me visit you there while you await judgment. Let me not lose you completely. That's— Yusuf struggled for words. I don't even know if that's possible or permissible. It's possible. I've consulted the elders. They say a soul mark between bonded jinn and humans is rare, but not forbidden, as long as it doesn't interfere with judgment itself. I won't change your fate, Abba. I just want the right to say goodbye properly, to see you one more time before Allah takes you to whatever comes next. Yusuf saw the desperation in her. 20 years of accumulated love with nowhere to go once he was gone. She wasn't asking to change his fate, just to not lose him entirely in the moment of his death. And if I refuse, he asked softly, then I'll honor your wishes, Zainab said, her form dimming. But I'll spend the rest of my existence knowing I had the power to keep our bond beyond death, and you denied me. I'll spend centuries wondering if you ever really loved me as much as you claimed. The manipulation was obvious, but Yusuf couldn't deny the genuine pain behind it. This was his daughter, strange, powerful, impossible daughter, begging not to be abandoned completely. Let me think, he said, and pray. Give me until Fajr. Zainab nodded and disappeared, leaving Yusuf alone with the most impossible choice of his life. Yusuf spent that night in prayer like he never had before. He prayed tahajjud with tears streaming down his face. He recited every surah he knew, seeking guidance. He opened the Quran at random, looking for signs, for wisdom, for anything that could tell him what was right. The verse his eyes fell on was from Surah Al-Kahf, and remain patient with those who call upon their Lord in the morning and the evening, seeking his countenance. And let not your eyes pass beyond them, desiring adornments of the worldly life, and do not obey one whose heart we have made heedless of our remembrance. He read it again and again, trying to understand. Was Zainab the one whose heart was heedless? Or was he, in his fear of crossing boundaries, becoming rigid where Allah might have intended flexibility? Just before Fajr, Malam Ibrahim appeared at his door. I felt you needed company, the old Imam said simply, settling beside Yusuf in the courtyard. Your distress reached me even in sleep. Yusuf told him everything, the offer, the choice, the impossible decision. Ibrahim was quiet for a long time. Then he said, let me tell you a story. When I was a young man, my mother was dying. A traditional healer offered to extend her life through methods I didn't understand. Herbs, rituals, things that made me uncomfortable. I refused on her behalf, citing religion, citing propriety. She died 3 days later. And do you regret it? Yusuf asked. Every single day, Ibrahim admitted. Not because I made the wrong choice. I still believe I honored Allah's will, but because I never asked her what she wanted, I decided for her. And in doing so, I denied her agency in her own fate. He turned to Yusuf with eyes full of hard-earned wisdom. Zainab isn't asking to change your fate. She's asking for connection beyond death. The question isn't whether it's allowed. The question is whether you believe your bond with her is valuable enough to extend beyond this life. That's between you, her, and Allah. As the call to Fajr echoed across Kano, Yusuf made his decision. After prayer, he found Zainab in her usual spot under the mango tree. She looked small, vulnerable, despite her ancient power. "I'll accept the binding," Yusuf said quietly, "not because I fear death, but because I believe our bond deserves to continue. You are my daughter. Even death shouldn't end that completely." Zainab's eyes widened. "Truly? Truly. But understand this. I'm doing this for you, not for me. I'm at peace with dying, but you're not at peace with losing me. So let's do this your way." The binding ceremony happened at sunset that same day. Zainab called no witnesses. This was private, sacred, between father and daughter alone. She had Yusuf sit beneath the mango tree while she began to chant in the Djinn tongue, words that predated human language. Her form became pure flame, beautiful and terrifying. She reached out and placed one hand over Yusuf's heart. He felt heat, not burning, but intense, like being embraced by the sun itself. "This will hurt," she warned. "I know." The pain was indescribable. It felt like his soul was being branded, marked, fundamentally altered. Yusuf screamed, unable to help himself, and Zainab wept as she worked, hating that she had to cause him pain, even as she completed the binding. When it was finished, Yusuf collapsed, gasping. On his chest, invisible to normal sight but burning in his awareness, was a mark, Zainab's true name, written in the language of fire. "It's done," she whispered, her form returning to the familiar child. "Now when you die, I'll be able to find you, to visit you in the barzakh, to say proper goodbye before your judgment." "Good," Yusuf managed, his voice weak. Then it was worth it. Zainab helped him to his bed, where he immediately fell into exhausted sleep. She sat beside him through the night, holding his hand, whispering prayers in Arabic and Djinn tongue both, begging Allah to forgive them if they had overstepped. But neither of them knew. The binding had consequences they hadn't anticipated. The mark changed everything. In the weeks following the binding, Yusuf felt Zainab's presence constantly, not physically, but as an awareness at the edge of his consciousness. He could sense her emotions, her thoughts, her very essence intertwined with his own. At first it was comforting. When pain racked his failing body, her presence soothed him. When loneliness threatened in the deep hours of night, he felt her nearby. But then it became suffocating. Zainab began to refuse him privacy of any kind. She was there when he woke, when he prayed, when he taught, when he tried to rest. Her justification was always the same. "You have so little time left, Abba. I need to be with you for every moment." She stopped allowing visitors. When Malam Ibrahim came to call, Zainab appeared at the door, polite but firm. "He's resting. He needs his strength." "Zainab, I wish to see my friend," Ibrahim protested. "And he wishes to rest," she countered. "Your visits tire him. I'm protecting him." Ibrahim's eyes narrowed. "From life, you're isolating him, daughter of fire." "I'm treasuring him," Zainab corrected coldly. "Something you with centuries less experience cannot understand." She began monitoring his food, his medicine, his every movement. "You're too weak to walk to the mosque," she'd say, when Yusuf tried to leave. "Pray here. I'll pray with you." "I want to see my students," Yusuf protested one afternoon. "They can come here," Zainab replied. "I'll arrange it." But she never did. And when Yusuf called out to neighbors passing by, Zainab's magic would muffle his voice, make him seem confused, elderly, not quite himself. "What are you doing?" Yusuf demanded one evening after she turned away yet another visitor. "Protecting you," Zainab said simply. "The binding lets me feel everything you feel, Abba. I know when you're in pain, when you're struggling, when interaction costs you energy you can't spare. I'm managing your final months, so they're peaceful." "You're imprisoning me," Yusuf said flatly. Zainab's expression hardened. "I'm loving you, but you're too human to understand the difference." That night Yusuf tried to leave the compound. He made it as far as the gate before invisible force gently but firmly pushed him back. "Zainab!" he shouted. "Release me!" She appeared, her form flickering with distress. "Abba, please, the outside world is dangerous for you now. You collapsed last week just walking to the mosque. What if you fall and no one finds you? What if your heart gives out on some dusty road? Let me protect you here where you're safe." "This isn't protection," Yusuf said, his voice breaking. "This is captivity. You've made me a prisoner in my own home." "Only until you die," Zainab said, and the casual way she said it made Yusuf's blood run cold. "After that you'll be free. You'll go to your judgment, and I'll visit you in the barzakh as promised. But until then, while you're still weak and mortal and mine, I'm keeping you safe, even if you hate me for it." Yusuf saw then what he had created, a love so intense it had curdled into possession. Zainab didn't see him as a person anymore. She saw him as a treasure to be hoarded, protected, kept away from anything that might hasten his end. The binding had shown her exactly how fragile he was, and that knowledge had transformed care into obsession. "You've changed," Yusuf whispered. "When did my daughter become my jailer?" "When you bound yourself to me," Zainab replied, her voice sad but unyielding. "The moment you let me mark your soul, you gave me the right, the obligation to protect it. And I will, Abba, whether you understand or not, whether you forgive me or not, I will protect what's mine." She disappeared, leaving Yusuf alone in his beautiful prison. That night he wept for the first time since his mother's death 70 years ago. He had wanted family so desperately that he'd accepted a Djinn daughter, and now that daughter's love was killing him more surely than any disease. 3 months into his captivity, Yusuf grew dangerously thin, not from illness alone but from hopelessness. He had stopped eating regularly, stopped engaging with Zainab's attempts at conversation, stopped pretending this was love rather than imprisonment. Zainab tried everything. She prepared his favorite foods, suya, jollof rice, masa with honey, and set them before him with desperate hope in her ancient eyes. "Please eat, Abba. You're wasting away." "Then let me waste," Yusuf replied, his voice hollow. "If I cannot live freely, I'd rather not live at all." "Don't say that." Zainab's form flickered violently. "You're depressed. It's your illness talking. When you die naturally and peacefully, you'll thank me for protecting you." "I'll never thank you for this." The words hit Zainab like physical blows. She stared at her father, this man she'd loved for 20 years, who had given her purpose and identity, and saw only resentment in his eyes. "You hate me," she whispered. "I hate what you've become," Yusuf corrected. "The daughter I knew understood mercy. She understood that love means letting go. You're not that daughter anymore. You're something else, something I don't recognize." Zainab fled, disappearing into smoke and shadows, leaving Yusuf alone in the compound that had become his tomb. But someone had been watching. Malam Ibrahim, growing increasingly concerned by Yusuf's absence from the mosque and the community, had enlisted help, not from humans, but from the Djinn elders who had witnessed the original bonding ceremony 20 years prior. They came at dawn, materializing in the courtyard as Zainab performed her morning prayers. She looked up, startled, to find herself surrounded by 6 ancient Djinn, including the elder who had officiated her declaration of family. "Zainab bint Yusuf," the elder said formally, using the name she had taken when she became Yusuf's daughter. "We have been summoned by human and Djinn alike to address a grievance. You stand accused of imprisoning your father through excessive devotion. How do you answer?" Zainab rose, her form solid and defiant. "I protect him. That's a daughter's right." "Protection is a right," another Djinn elder spoke, a female whose form was like crystallized smoke. "Imprisonment is an abuse. You have taken a bond of love and twisted it into chains. We can feel it from here, the mark you placed on his soul. It's no longer a connection. It's a leash." "He's dying," Zainab shouted. "Every moment he spends outside these walls risks hastening his death. I won't let him throw away the time he has left." "But it's his time to throw away," the first elder said gently. "Child, you have forgotten the fundamental difference between Djinn and human. We live so long that every moment is cheap, but humans, their moments are precious because they're limited. You're protecting his body while killing his spirit. Can't you see that?" "I see that you don't understand love," Zainab said, her voice breaking. "You've never bonded with a human. You've never felt them slipping away knowing you could stop it but being told it's wrong. I'd rather he hate me and live than love me and die unnecessarily soon." "Unnecessarily?" The female elder moved closer, her eyes boring into Zainab. "You think his death is unnecessary? Girl, it's the most necessary thing in his existence. It's how humans return to Allah. You're not protecting him. You're denying him his destiny." "Then his destiny is cruel." Zainab's control shattered completely. Her form exploded into pure flame, filling the courtyard with heat and light. Why give me a father only to rip him away? Why let me love him if I have to lose him? Why make me care if caring only leads to this agony? The elders were silent, letting her rage burn itself out. When she finally collapsed back into her child form, sobbing in the dust, the first elder knelt beside her. "Because that's what love is," he said softly. "Love isn't possession. It's not holding tight. It's opening your hands and trusting Allah with what you cherish most. Your father taught you that once, remember?" Zainab looked up, tears streaming. "I don't remember how to let go." "Then learn again," the elder said, "before you destroy the very thing you're trying to save." They brought Yusuf out then, frail, thin, but still possessed of dignity. He looked at Zainab, and she saw in his eyes not hatred, but profound sadness. "Daughter," he said quietly, "do you remember the first night you came to me? When I asked what you wanted?" "I said I wanted to be raised," Zainab whispered, "to be loved. And I loved you by teaching you, by showing you patience, by letting you make mistakes and grow from them. I never caged you, Zainab, even when your nature frightened me, even when your power could have destroyed me. I trusted you." "I know, Abba. Then trust me now. Trust that I know what's best for my own soul. Let me spend my final weeks as I choose, visiting friends, teaching students, sitting in the mosque, living fully even if it shortens my time. Don't let your love for me become the thing that kills who I am." Zainab looked at her father, at the elders, at the choice before her. She could maintain the prison, use her power to keep him safe and isolated until death took him peacefully in his sleep. Or she could open the cage and trust him with his own remaining life, even knowing he might collapse in the street, might die among strangers, might leave her with less time than if she'd kept him locked away. "I'm afraid," she admitted in a voice so small it barely registered. "I know," Yusuf said, moving closer despite his weakness. "I'm afraid too, but fear is not a reason to stop living, or to stop others from living." Zainab closed her eyes, feeling the mark on his soul, the connection between them. With conscious effort she began to loosen it, not removing the binding completely, but giving it slack, giving him freedom while maintaining only the thinnest thread that would let her find him after death. The change was immediate. The invisible barriers around the compound dissolved. The suffocating presence that had monitored Yusuf's every breath eased. He took his first full breath in months and smiled. "Thank you, daughter." "Don't thank me yet," Zainab said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm going to hate every moment you're out of my sight. I'm going to worry constantly. This is the hardest thing I've ever done." "That's how you know it's the right thing," Yusuf said. "Love isn't supposed to be easy." The elders departed, satisfied. Malam Ibrahim, who had been waiting outside, rushed in to embrace his friend. And Zainab stood apart, watching, learning what she should have known all along, that holding someone loosely with open hands is harder and holier than gripping them tightly with chains. Malam Yusuf lived for 4 more months after his liberation. They were the richest months of his life. He returned to teaching at the mosque, his voice weak but his wisdom sharp. He visited old friends, repaired broken relationships, laughed freely for the first time in years. He attended weddings and naming ceremonies, blessed newborns, counseled troubled marriages, and Zainab watched from a distance, honoring her promise. She didn't interfere, didn't hover, didn't try to manage his every move, but he could always feel her, a warm presence at the edge of his awareness, loving him from afar, giving him the space to be fully human one last time. On his final day, Yusuf collapsed after Jumu'ah prayer, not in some isolated corner where he might have died alone, but surrounded by his community, students, friends, neighbors who had known him for decades. They carried him home, reciting Quran, their voices a chorus of love and respect. Zainab was waiting in the courtyard, her form that of the 12-year-old girl he'd first truly known her as. She took his hand as they laid him on his mat beneath the mango tree. "Abba," she whispered, "it's time, isn't it?" "Yes, daughter," Yusuf said, his breathing labored but his eyes clear. "Thank you for letting me choose how to spend my end." "I'm still terrified," she admitted. "In a few moments, you'll be gone, and I'll be alone again." "No," Yusuf corrected gently, "you'll never be alone. You have a community now, Ibrahim and the others. You have the elders of your kind who've watched over you. And you have memories of a father who loved you enough to take the most impossible risk." Malam Ibrahim led the community in recitation of Surah Yasin, the tradition for the dying. Zainab joined in, her voice blending with the humans, And for a moment, there was no distinction between fire and clay, jinn and human, only souls united in worship. As Yusuf's breathing slowed, he looked at Zainab one last time. "Remember, daughter, love is not possession, it's liberation. Thank you for learning that with me. Thank you for teaching me, Abba," Zainab whispered. "I'll see you in the barzakh. I'll say proper goodbye. I promise." Yusuf smiled, whispered the Shahada, "La ilaha illa Allah, Muhammad Rasul Allah," and his soul departed. The community wept, but Zainab, through her tears, felt something she hadn't expected. Peace, because she had given him what he needed most, the freedom to die with dignity, surrounded by love on his own terms. 3 days after the burial, Zainab fulfilled her promise. Using the soul mark, she traveled to the barzakh, that space between death and resurrection where souls await judgment. There, she found Yusuf, his form luminous and peaceful, resting in a garden of incredible beauty. "Abba," she called softly. He turned, smiled. "Zainab, you came. I promised. I just wanted to see you one more time, to tell you that I'm okay, that letting you go was the hardest and best thing I've ever done. That you were right about everything." "I wasn't right about everything," Yusuf said with a gentle laugh, "but I'm glad you found peace." "What happens to you now?" Zainab asked. "I wait for judgment, and then, inshallah, I'll see your grandmother, your mother, all those I've loved and lost, and one day far in the future when your own time comes, perhaps we'll meet again." "Jinn don't have the same afterlife," Zainab reminded him sadly. "Allah is merciful beyond our understanding," Yusuf said. "Who knows what arrangements he's made for beings like you who learn to love like humans. Have faith, daughter, have faith." They talked until the pull of their different worlds became too strong. Zainab had to return to her realm, and Yusuf to his waiting, but the goodbye was gentler than she'd feared, softened by the knowledge that she had honored him properly. When she returned to the compound, now hers by inheritance, Zainab found something unexpected. The community hadn't abandoned her. They brought food, offered condolences, included her in gatherings, not as a jinn pretending to be human, but as Malam Yusuf's daughter, worthy of respect in her own right. She continued his work, teaching Quran at the mosque, though she could never replace him. She tended his grave with both human custom and jinn magic, keeping it perpetually green and fragrant. And she kept the mango tree, her grandmother's tree, as a living memorial to the impossible family that had grown beneath its branches. So what did Malam Yusuf and Zainab teach us? What truth emerged from this impossible bond between fire and clay? First, loneliness makes us vulnerable to choices we might not otherwise make. Yusuf's prayer was born of desperation, and desperation opens doors, some to blessing, some to trial. Before you call out for companionship in whatever form, understand that Allah might answer in ways that challenge everything you thought you knew. Second, love without boundaries becomes prison. Zainab's devotion was real, but when mixed with fear and possessiveness, it nearly destroyed what she cherished most. True love requires trust, trust that those we love know what's best for their own souls, even when it terrifies us to give them that freedom. Third, family transcends form but not responsibility. Yusuf took a jinn as daughter, knowing it broke every convention. But having made that choice, he had to see it through, teaching her, correcting her, loving her even when she became monstrous in her devotion. Family is not just affection, it's accountability. Fourth, the unseen world is more complex than our theology sometimes allows. Jinn are not simply devils to fear or servants to command. They are beings capable of love, growth, and transformation, but they are not human, and pretending they are leads to tragedy. Respect the difference even as you acknowledge the connection. Fifth, and most important, death is not the enemy. Zainab tried to protect Yusuf from the very thing that would complete his journey. We do this too, using medicine, obsession, denial to fight the inevitable. But death for the believer is not an end, it's a transition. And sometimes the greatest act of love is allowing someone to make that transition with dignity. If this story moved you, I ask you to do 3 things. First, examine your own relationships. Are you holding someone too tightly? Are you protecting them from growth because you fear losing them? Open your hands, trust Allah with those you love. Second, share this story, not for my channel's sake, but because someone you know needs to hear it. Someone is struggling with letting go. Someone is making love into chains. Share this so they can learn what Zainab learned before it's too late. Third, leave a comment telling me, What would you have done if you were Malam Yusuf? Would you have accepted the binding? Would you have taken in the Djinn daughter in the first place? Your answers help us all understand ourselves better. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that challenge how you understand faith, family, and the unseen world. Click the notification bell so you never miss when we explore these mysteries together. And remember, in this world and the next, love is measured not by how tightly we hold, but by how gracefully we release. May Allah grant us all the strength to love without possessing, to care without controlling, and to trust Him with those we hold most dear. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all.